right? Now,
Yeah.
I haven't played South of Midnight. I didn't play it because most people who played it said, it's okay. It's fine. It's kind of repetitive and been there, done that, right? To me, that shouldn't have been a game because that clearly started as a story or a world or an art style and said, let's find a game to fit this. That is what has harmed so much of the industry. And I think all these people being laid off, while sad, I think it's more of a correction where the industry is recognizing very slowly on the console side that as much as a lot of people love their great graphics, and that's not going away, there's going to be less of them. As much as people love that stuff, the game is always the thing. And when you look at something like a Rocket League, a rematch, a Call of Duty multiplayer, a Section 1, a Peak, the industry is filled with examples of low-cost, high-impact games, and that's what it should have always been. But Sony rolls in, and I was part of it. I believe that games should be the next movies. And Sony rolls in and starts to say, look, this is the next big thing, and we can have these long cutscenes, and we can hire actors, and we can have voice acting, and that's what Sony used to differentiate itself. But I think the chickens are kind of coming home to roost, and it's got very little to do with Game Pass and very much to do with the fact that what's not sustainable is the definition of what a mainstream game is, or at least a AAA game for hardcore gamers. I think the younger generation's already moved on. They don't give a shit.
Oh, yeah.
But people who watch this kind of show or go to not IGN, but like NeoGAF, they're reeling from it. And so I don't know if the chat has any insights into why everybody's shitting on Game Pass. But if you lay off, like my take is if you lay off the team that did Forza Motorsport, that's not a Game Pass issue. That's an issue with the fact that they put out Forza Horizon. It was a huge success for them on the 2 platforms or the 3 platforms they put it on. It's more mainstream. It's an easier game to play. And the cost that they are used to spending to develop a hardcore racing sim, the audience just isn't there. Whether they would have put it in a box and sold it for $70 or put it on Game Pass, one could argue that, let's put it this way. I never would have bought the new Forza Motorsport, but I did play it on Game Pass for about 5 minutes. Yeah. One would argue that Game Pass would have been a better way to discover that game because a lot of people will go, oh no, I'm a Horizon guy because I don't like the simmy shit, but I was willing to try it. If you look at the John Romero game, which I know you saw that they... There's been various things, but I think Brenda put out a statement today saying, Brenda Romero, who runs it with John, I think she's the CEO of it, that, their game was canceled. They didn't say who, but it's pretty much made it clear they were saying it was Microsoft, and they're talking to other publishers. The studio isn't shut down, and they're looking for options, and a bunch of publishers have reached out. And I think that's great. But Microsoft could look at it and say, ultimately what this is a really good, fun boomer shooter. They just put out Doom. I get the sense Doom: The Dark Ages did not deliver like the other 2 Dooms did. I could be wrong, but I don't hear a lot of people talking about it. I adored the last 2 Dooms. This new Doom I played for about 3 hours total. I'm like, I'm good. I'm moving on. It didn't... am I wrong on this, or did the latest Doom hit the zeitgeist like the other ones? So I think that could have been them looking at that and going, we just spent all this money. And it probably wasn't the right read unless John's game wasn't very good, which I don't believe was the case. But they could have looked at it and said, okay, you know what? If we can't make the boomer shooter from the premier team of boomer shooters move the needle and we're having to cut somewhere, maybe we'll cut this, right? But all of these things make sense. It's not like they killed Game Pass. They gutted teams that weren't really like somebody in NeoGAF or somewhere on Twitter somewhere today said it was so funny. They said, this is a studio that's coming out right now with a game where you play a lighthouse, meaning Microsoft.
Oh, yeah.
Right? And it's not like these guys are just running around and canceling things with no logic. Clearly, they think the cost of that game and there's enough of an audience and it's good enough. And I guess that's why it's hard for me to figure out why the Game Pass thing, how much of it is tribal and how much of it is actually, no, this is a really good statement about, the market. I get if you're a developer and you don't go on Game Pass and then you're like, but that's the business, right? If you're like David Goldfarb, who did Battlefield and Metal Hellsinger and stuff, and I think he was on Game Pass, but it may not have launched on Game Pass. If you go out there and you're selling for $70 and that same week you're competing against a couple of new Game Pass drops, one of which is a big one, not to mention all the free-to-play stuff. I mean, the market's just changed, man. It's not Game Pass. Unless the chat has a compelling argument, I don't see how the entire debacle can be laid at the feet of Game Pass. I think it's just I think the industry's adjusting and changing.
People are saying